Hello, you are listening to an archived worship service of First Presbyterian Church, Columbus, Mississippi. Thank you for listening.
It was this past Wednesday we began the season of Lent. That is 40 days and 40 nights, not counting Sundays. I don't know if I've ever made that point here before. So technically, I guess, if you gave something up for Lent, Sundays wouldn't be included in that? That came up a couple of years ago when someone told me they had a favorite TV show that they were giving up for Lent that came on Sunday nights. And I said, you're in luck. Lent does not include Sundays. And the reason why that is true is because Sunday is the reminder of Easter. It's why we worship on Sunday. Sunday is not the Sabbath. The Sabbath was Saturday. That was the day God rested, the seventh day. Sunday is the new day, the first day, the day where we recognize Easter and the power of God over the grave. So 40 days and 40 nights, not counting Sundays. That's the path that we are on. That's where we are going. Beginning with Ash Wednesday by the mark of penitence and the intentional reflection of a community of faith that gathers together, that worships together, that reads Scripture and prays together, we are on this path. The season prepares us for that long shadow of the cross and turns our gaze away from the starlight on a manger scene. It is its power. It is the meaning of our faith. There are no shortcuts. There's no way around Lent. There's no way to hurry Easter along. Lent is something we must experience. It is a journey that we must all take. There's simply no cutting in line or skipping ahead. Lent is the annual pilgrimage that asks us to look deeply into our souls, our relationships, our desires, and even our worship. So this year we are going to look into what it is that we learn and glean from the gospel of Jesus Christ as Jesus encounters people along his path, because we encounter others along ours. I think this is a really helpful way to see what we can take and what we need to leave behind in our encounters with other people. We are going to talk about Jesus as he meets the Samaritan woman, a woman who's been ostracized from her community, who sits alone in the midday sun. We're going to talk about the blind man who's been left behind by his community, isolated by his illness. We're going to talk about the desperate father who's seeking healing for a child. We're going to talk about a rich young ruler and the tempter. Today we begin with a close encounter, one that lends us the structure of the season of Lent. The 40 days and the 40 nights of Lent are a creation of our own doing as the church, and we take that structure from this passage. Jesus rises from the waters of baptism. You know the story. The sky parts. A voice is heard. This is my Son, the beloved. With him I am well pleased. And then the dove. And in our imaginations, we see a dove lighting softly upon Jesus' head or shoulders, this kind and beautiful scene, until that descending dove becomes a force that tosses him into the wilderness, a spirit that drives him out of the community, away from the river's edge, up, it says, into the wilderness. Now, for all of the Old Testament and even the New Testament, we see the image of the wilderness. It is chaos, it is disorder, it is complete loss of control. Think about all the times we see the watery chaos of the 40 days and 40 nights of Noah, the chaos and loss of control of the children of Israel out in the wilderness for 40 years. Over and over again, when you are symbolizing a loss of power, the people are always in the wilderness. Remember Elijah. When he is being hunted and sought for his life, he escapes out into the wilderness and wishes just simply to give up. Jesus is thrust out into the wilderness, the scripture says, to go out into this isolation, 40 days and 40 nights of thorned bushes and wild animals. 40 days and 40 nights to ponder and pray over the last words that he heard spoken as they bounced around in his head. This is my Son, the beloved, with him I am well pleased. Those words of declaration, those words that claim Jesus, still rattle around as he suffers the hardship of wilderness. He is the beloved with an empty stomach. He is the Son of God with a rock to rest his head. He is the beloved with parched lips. He is the Son of God nearing sunstroke. God's words claim him, and yet he is in the wilderness. It is at this moment, the encounter takes place. Satan, the devil, the tempter, comes to Jesus. Now, this wasn't the first time that the devil's had his encounter. This wasn't the first time or his first time around the block that he's had to deal with these children of God. It was the first Son of God who wanted control about knowledge. Adam, eat of this, and you'll be like God. Control, power. The years went by, but the encounters were the same. Another chosen child of God who was to take God's message out into the larger world. Look, Abraham, why wait on Sarah and God to take care of this? There's Hagar right there. About power and control. And what about all of those children of God, all of those who were thrust out into the wilderness, being saved from the Pharaoh's hand, all of those children that said, we want food, we need water. What about this promised land? Have you led us out here to suffer and to die in the chaos of the wilderness? And they complained mightily against Moses. Oh, the devil knew these children of God. Even the one they called closest to God's own heart. It didn't take much more than a provocative view from a balcony for that child of God, David, to take control and power and even command death. This wasn't the devil's first time around the block. I bet the devil thought that it would be as quick of work. After all, it always had been. The devil deals and manipulates always with power and control. There is no sure path to self-destruction for us, children of God, than trying to find our own brand, our own way, our own path to power and control. But this child of God was not like the others. Jesus has offered 3 temptations in our scripture reading this morning, but they all have to do with power and control. Power and control to gratify a desire, power and control to skip past the cross and its pain and humiliation and its suffering, power and control to subvert the resurrection and the slow, messy freedom that comes with faith. If Jesus reached out his hand, he could have all of that power and control, says the devil. But the devil will learn what the shepherds first heard. This is not a simple human. This is not simple flesh. He is Emmanuel, God with us, the Word incarnate. And this encounter will offer 2 of the greatest expressions of the good news of the gospel. This encounter with the devil today gives us 2 of the most extraordinary pieces to what we claim as our faith. 2 movements of the gospel that change every encounter from this moment onward on our journey of faith. The first, Jesus gives us a pattern to meet temptation. Jesus was never going to be the last child of God tempted. You and I will have our encounters as well. We face daily what it is to be tempted by power and control. And it is Christ who equips us to resist those temptations, to think critically as people of faith, to find our own voice, to be able to say ourselves, Satan, be gone. What appetite would enslave you? What cravings could imprison us? What tests or demands to make of God would satisfy us? What ways will we find to distort our discipleship? And ultimately, what desire or power or belonging is worth our worship? Christ answers all 3 of these before the devil in this encounter, and in doing so gives us a chance to find our own voice, to say no, to think critically about the times that we have been offered that same power over others, to skip ahead, to meet our desires, or distort our relationship with God. Christ gives us the ability to stand firm, to keep on the path. The second, and honestly the most important, Christ walks where we simply cannot. Where we will fail, where we will fall apart, where we lose control and act out of desperation, where we seek our own safety, control, and power. It is when we fail, and we will, that we know Christ will not. Christ has not. Christ does not. Christ's victory will be our victory one day too. And so not only does Christ answer these questions for himself, he answers all of these questions on our behalf, that we will be saved by God through the power of Jesus. This encounter gives us great hope that we will face our temptations with new words, that these encounters will not always trip us up. But when they do, our hope is not simply in ourselves and in our own abilities. This encounter gives us the greatest of hope. Hope that we can learn from the perfect example that is laid before us, and hope that our failure is not God's failure. And it is vital that we hear these two words of hope. It is vital that we hear these words on the outset of our journey. And they are summed up by the last things we hear of our passage today. The first good news is, devil, be gone. And the second good news is, the angels will tend. The angels will come to our aid. God's love will surround us. It is vital that we hear these two words of good hope on the outset of our journey of Lent, because this will be a difficult journey. We walk in the shadow of the cross. We are not moving toward some great victory of our own making. We move toward the death and the crucifixion. And it is only by the power of Christ, who has walked this path before and who walks with us now, that we can sustain and be sustained in our being on a journey like this. I don't know where the Spirit has thrust you. I know that you've been claimed. You've been named in the waters of baptism. You have been called a child of God. And from that moment on, those words have echoed in your mind, even as you have been tempted, even as you have fallen short, even as you have moved into the chaos of life. Those words continue to echo, even when you're tempted with, if you are truly the Son of God, if you truly are a child of God, we will know in every part of our being what it is to be tempted by power and control. I don't know where the Spirit's thrust you today. I don't know what temptation that you are confronted with, only the fact that you are. We all are. This is the nature of that old devil. Lent asks us to battle those things that are deep within us, those temptations that we all feel to take on power and control, to skip ahead to the ending. Christ gives us the word for our time and instructs us of how we can move through this journey together. Away with you, Satan. May the angels attend you as you move on this journey of Lent. Amen and amen.